Desperation's edge. The command center of Halcyon Station shuddered as another barrage of Kryvax energy torpedoes struck the outer shields. Dust and small debris rained from the ceiling panels, coating the shoulders of the gathered Alliance officers. Director Sora Vex Tal closed her 4 eyes momentarily, her scaled skin shifting from its usual calm blue to a troubled gray. "Status report," she demanded, though the tremor in her voice betrayed that she already knew the answer. Chief Engineer Realdor's antennae drooped as he consulted his datapad. "Main shields at 17% capacity, Director. 2 more barrages." "Like that, and we're exposed. Power reserves are critically low." Around the circular command table, representatives from 6 different Alliance species exchanged grim looks. Halcyon Station, once a thriving hub of interstellar commerce and diplomacy, was now the last significant Alliance outpost in the Orion Arm. For 8 standard cycles, the Kryvax Empire had methodically conquered every inhabited system in their expansion path, their crystalline warships unstoppable, their tactics merciless. "The evacuation transports?" Vex Tal asked, her gaze fixed on the holographic display showing the massive Kryvax fleet surrounding their position. "Only 3 made it through the blockade before they tightened their formation," reported Security Commander Zeth, a Volarian whose translucent skin pulsed with nervous bioluminescence. "That's barely 8% of our civilian population." The weight of those words settled over the room. Nearly 20,000 souls remained on the station with nowhere to go. "The Alliance Council sends their—" Fleet Admiral Tarek hesitated, his reptilian features hardening. "Their thoughts and prayers. But no reinforcements," Vex Tal finished for him. "Every available ship is defending the core worlds, Director. We're on our own." A younger officer, Lieutenant Pax, spoke up from her communications station. "Maybe we could negotiate? The Kryvax have accepted surrenders from—" "They accepted surrenders only to enslave entire populations for their mining operations," interrupted Commander Zeth sharply. "The lucky ones are worked to death within a year. The unlucky ones become subjects in their biological weapons programs." The station trembled again, and this time the lights flickered ominously. "We have perhaps 6 hours before shields fail." "Completely," Realdor announced, his voice eerily calm now that certainty had replaced hope. Director Vex Tal straightened her posture, her skin shifting to a resolute purple. "Then we fight until the end. Prepare all remaining defensive systems. If Halcyon Station falls, we'll ensure the Kryvax remember the cost." The officers dispersed to their stations, the grim reality of their situation etched into their movements. Vex Tal remained at the command table, studying the enemy formation. The Kryvax had no need to rush. They simply waited, a noose of crystalline warships slowly tightening around the station's throat. "Director," called Lieutenant Pax suddenly, her voice rising with confusion. "I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. They're not Kryvax. Configurations!" The holographic display flickered as new data was processed. Dozens of unidentified vessels were emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system, their formation tight and purposeful. "Alliance reinforcements?" Admiral Tarek asked, hope flickering briefly across his face. "No," Pax replied, her fingers flying across her console. "These match no known Alliance signatures. They're smaller than our capital ships, but their energy readings are unusual." The command center fell silent as they watched the newcomers approach. Unlike the elegant crystalline architecture of Kryvax ships or the smooth organic curves of Alliance vessels, these craft were angular, utilitarian, almost crude in comparison. "They're hailing us," Pax announced. Vex Tal nodded. "Put it through." The main screen activated and collective gasps echoed through the command center. The being on the screen was unlike any Alliance species, bipedal with exposed skin, lacking any apparent natural defenses, with strange fur concentrated on the top of its head. Its face was etched with lines that suggested either age or stress, and its eyes held a hardness that made even the veteran Valerian security chief tense. "This is Commander Elena Reyes of the United Earth Defense Force," the being said in a clear, authoritative voice. "We've received your distress signal. Hold position. We're coming in." Before Vextal could respond, the transmission ended. Around the command table, confused glances were exchanged. "Earth?" Admiral Tarek repeated. "I'm not familiar with this system." Rildor was already accessing the station's database. "It's a frontier world, Admiral. Pre-FTL civilization last we checked, which was nearly 30 standard cycles ago. They weren't considered advanced enough for Alliance contact protocols." "Well," Zeth observed dryly, "they clearly figured out FTL travel since then. On the tactical display, the Kryvax fleet was reacting to the newcomers, several of their smaller vessels breaking formation to intercept." "They don't stand a chance," Tarek muttered. "The Kryvax will obliterate them before they even get close to the station." But, as they watched, the Earth vessels performed a maneuver that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Instead of maintaining a defensive formation, they accelerated, deliberately splitting their forces to engage multiple Kryvax ships simultaneously. "What are they doing?" Vextal whispered. "That's suicide." The tactical officer's voice was tinged with disbelief as he reported, "The Earth vessels are ramming the Kryvax ships." Not quite ramming, they soon realized. The human vessels executed precise micro-jumps, appearing dangerously close to Kryvax ships before unleashing concentrated weapons fire at point-blank range. Where Alliance tactics emphasized distance and shield management, these humans fought, with a shocking disregard for their own safety. "Their ships," Rildor observed with growing fascination. "They're designed to absorb damage, not avoid it. Indeed, while the human vessels took hits that would have crippled Alliance ships, they continued fighting. When one human vessel lost propulsion, it redirected all power to weapons, becoming a stationary turret that continued firing until the last possible moment." "Director," Pax called out, her voice rising with excitement. "They're punching a corridor. Through the blockade! They're coming straight for us!" 3 of the larger human vessels broke through the Kryvax line, accelerating toward Halcyon Station, while the rest of their fleet engaged the enemy, drawing fire away from both the station and the approaching ships. "They're requesting emergency docking procedures," Pax reported. Vextal hesitated only briefly. "Grant it, and prepare to receive them in Docking Bay 4. 20 minutes later, Director Vextal stood in the station's main docking bay alongside Admiral Tarek, Commander Zeth, and a contingent of security officers. The massive doors slid open to reveal 3 human vessels, their hulls scarred and smoking from battle damage that should have rendered them inoperable. The lead ship's airlock cycled open and a group of humans emerged. At their head walked the woman from the transmission, Commander Elena Reyes. Up close, she appeared even more striking, smaller than most Alliance species, but moving with a predatory confidence that belied her size. Behind her came more humans, some carrying equipment cases, others wearing what were clearly combat suits. "Director Vextal?" Reyes approached directly, extending a hand in what must have been a cultural greeting gesture. "Commander Reyes," Vextal acknowledged, mimicking the gesture awkwardly. "Your intervention was unexpected. We picked up your distress signal 3 weeks ago," Reyes explained. "It took us that long to assemble a response force and plot a course through Kryvax territory." Admiral Tarek stepped forward. "You deliberately traveled through Kryvax-controlled space? How did you avoid detection?" A slight smile crossed Reyes' face. "We didn't. We fought our way through 7 blockades and 3 patrol fleets to get here." The Alliance officers exchanged shocked glances. "That's impossible," Zeth stated flatly. "The Kryvax have superior numbers and technology. The Alliance has lost hundreds of ships trying to break their lines." "With respect, Commander," one of the other humans interjected, a broad-shouldered individual with darker skin. "You've been fighting them wrong." Before Zeth could respond to what seemed like an insult, Reyes gestured toward her companion. This is Major Jackson, my tactical officer. What he means is that we've studied the Kryvax engagement patterns. They're predictable when you know what to look for. We've been fighting the Kryvax for 3 years, Admiral Tarek countered, his voice stiff with pride. We've gathered extensive tactical data. And yet, Reyes observed without inflection, you're losing. The bluntness of her statement created an uncomfortable silence, but none could dispute it. Perhaps, Vextal suggested diplomatically, we should continue this conversation in the command center. Your insights would be valuable, Commander Reyes. As they walked through the station corridors, the Alliance officers couldn't help but notice how the human soldiers moved, always scanning their surroundings, maintaining precise distances from each other, their hands never far from their weapons. They moved like predators in unfamiliar territory. In the command center, Reyes and her officers studied the tactical display showing the continuing battle outside. The human fleet, despite being outnumbered, was holding its own against the Kryvax forces, employing maneuvers that appeared chaotic but clearly followed some internal logic. Your ships, Rildor couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. They're taking damage that would cripple our vessels. How are they still operational? Major Jackson grinned. Redundant systems, compartmentalized design, and good old-fashioned over-engineering. Our ships aren't pretty, but they're built to take a beating and keep fighting. Your people willingly fly vessels designed with the expectation of damage? Admiral Tarek asked, visibly disturbed by the concept. We design for the reality of combat, not the ideal, Reyes replied simply. Now let's talk about your situation. How long can your shields hold? The tactical briefing that followed revealed the stark differences in military philosophy between the Alliance and humanity. Where Alliance doctrine emphasized minimizing casualties and preserving assets, the humans spoke of acceptable losses and maximum damage output. Where Alliance commanders sought to retreat and regroup when outmatched, humans looked for vulnerabilities to exploit regardless of the cost. Your defensive strategy is sound for buying time, Reyes acknowledged. But it won't win this fight. The Kryvax have the numbers and can't afford to wait you out. We're not trying to win, Commander Zeth admitted bitterly. We're trying to survive long enough for evacuation. Reyes exchanged glances with her officers before responding. What if winning was an option? Director Vextal's skin shifted to a skeptical yellow. Against this many Kryvax ships? That's not possible. Difficult, certainly, Reyes conceded, but not impossible. We've developed weapons specifically designed to counter Kryvax shield harmonics. This revelation sent a ripple through the Alliance officers. How? Demanded Admiral Tarek. The Kryvax use crystalline quantum shields. We've never been able to penetrate them effectively. Another human officer, a woman with short gray hair and the insignia of a science division, stepped forward. Commander, with your permission? Reyes nodded, and the woman activated a small holographic projector. Dr. Helena Chen, Earth Defense Force Research Division. We've studied Kryvax shield technology extensively. Their quantum crystalline structure is impressive, but it has a fundamental flaw. The hologram displayed a technical analysis of the Kryvax shielding that was more detailed than anything the Alliance had compiled in years of conflict. The Kryvax shields operate on a resonance frequency that makes them nearly impervious to standard energy weapons, Dr. Chen explained. However, if you can match the counter frequency precisely and deliver a concentrated energy pulse, you can create a cascade failure throughout their shield matrix. And you've developed weapons that can do this? Rildor asked, his antennae quivering with excitement. We call them resonance torpedoes, Major Jackson confirmed. Limited range, but devastating effectiveness. We brought a stockpile with us, enough to arm your defense platforms. Hope, tentative but real, began to spread through the command center. But why? Director Vextal finally asked the question that had been troubling her since the humans arrived. Why would your people risk so much for a station and species you've never encountered before? Commander Reyes's expression grew solemn. 3 years ago, the Kryvax attacked one of our colony worlds. We had no warning, no idea they even existed. They destroyed the colony and everyone on it, over 5,000 people, when we tracked the attackers. We discovered the larger conflict with your alliance. So this is revenge, Admiral Tarek concluded. No, Reyes corrected him firmly. This is prevention. We studied the Kryvax, their patterns of conquest, and what they do to occupied worlds. Earth may be on the frontier now, but eventually they'd reach us. We decided not to wait for that day. She turned to face Director Vex Tal directly. Humanity has a long history of warfare among ourselves. It's not something we're proud of, but it taught us lessons written in blood. One of those lessons is that some enemies only understand strength and the willingness to use it. The station shook again as another barrage struck the shields, more violently this time. Shields at 12%, reported a station officer. Critical failure imminent. Commander Reyes looked around at the Alliance officers, her gaze direct and challenging. You have a choice to make. Continue with your current strategy and fall within hours, or fight alongside us with a chance of victory. What's it going to be? The Alliance leaders exchanged glances, centuries of cultural aversion to aggressive warfare warring with the instinct for survival. Director Vex Tal's scales shifted to a deep, determined blue as she made her decision. Tell us what you need, Commander Reyes. As the human officers began outlining their battle plan, the Alliance members watched with a mixture of awe and unease. They were about to learn what it meant to fight alongside a species that had turned warfare into an art form, a species that the Kryvax were about to wish they had never encountered. Unchained potential. 6 hours after the humans' arrival at Halcyon Station, the command center had transformed. Where once there was quiet resignation, now there was focused intensity. Human technicians worked alongside Alliance engineers, retrofitting the station's defense systems with their resonance technology. Commander Elena Reyes stood before the tactical display with Director Vex Tal, finalizing the details of their desperate counteroffensive. The Kryvax are regrouping, Vex Tal observed, watching as the crystalline ships formed a new attack pattern. They've called in reinforcements from the neighboring systems. They're adapting to our presence, Reyes agreed. They recognize we pose a legitimate threat. Admiral Tarek approached, his expression troubled. Commander, their numbers have nearly doubled. Even with your resonance weapons, the odds are... The odds don't matter, Reyes interrupted firmly. Only our resolve and execution do. Major Jackson joined them, accompanied by Commander Zeth. The defense platforms have been modified, Jackson reported, firing solutions calculated and locked in. And your plan to use our communication array as a weapon? Zeth asked, his bioluminescence flickering with skepticism. My security team has concerns about the structural integrity of... A violent tremor cut through the station, stronger than any previous impact. Warning signals blared across multiple consoles. They've switched to graviton cannons, Rildor shouted. From his engineering station. Shields can't compensate for this type of attack. They're learning, Reyes muttered, then raised her voice. Move up the timetable. Launch Operation Spearhead now. Outside the station, the reconfigured human vessels began executing a maneuver that defied conventional space combat wisdom. Rather than spreading out to minimize damage from enemy fire, they converged into tight formation groups, creating concentrated targets. What are they doing? Admiral Tarek demanded. They'll be destroyed in seconds. Vex Tal watched with growing understanding. They're drawing fire away from the station and from each other. Indeed, as the Kryvax focused their formidable weapons on the human formations, they failed to notice several smaller vessels detaching from the main groups, using the energy discharges as cover to slip through their lines. Infiltration teams away, reported a human communications officer. Phase 1 complete. Reyes nodded grimly. Now for Phase 2. Director, is your crew ready? Vex Tal's scales shifted to a determined indigo. As ready as we'll ever be, Commander. Then, let's return the Kryvax's hospitality, Reyes said, her voice hard. Fire resonance platforms. Across the station's exterior, the modified defense platforms activated simultaneously. Instead of conventional energy beams, they emitted pulses that were barely visible to the naked eye. When these pulses struck the Kryvax shields, they didn't dissipate as normal weapons fire would. Instead, they seemed to sink into the crystalline barriers, creating spreading patterns of fracture-like disruption. Direct hits on 23 targets, reported the tactical officer. Shield integrity, dropping on all marked vessels. For the first time since the Kryvax had appeared in Alliance space, their seemingly impenetrable defenses were failing. Now, Major, Reyes ordered. Jackson activated a secure channel. All strike teams, execute Sunburst Protocol. The small human, vessels that had infiltrated the Kryvax formation, suddenly accelerated toward specific targets. The largest Kryvax command ships whose shields were now compromised by the resonance weapons. Those ships, Admiral Tarek realized with horror. They're on suicide runs. Not suicide, Reyes corrected. Deployment. As the Alliance officers watched, the human vessels didn't crash into their targets, but instead executed precision maneuvers that brought them alongside the massive Kryvax ships. Magnetic grapples secured them to the crystalline hulls, and armored figures emerged, using specialized tools to cut through the weakened hull sections. Boarding parties? Vextal was astonished. No one has ever successfully boarded a Kryvax. Vessel! There's a first time for everything, Reyes replied with grim satisfaction. The tactical display updated with data streams from the boarding teams. Human soldiers moved through the alien corridors with practiced efficiency, encountering resistance but advancing steadily toward their objectives. Kryvax ship architecture is surprisingly consistent, explained Dr. Chen, who had joined them at the tactical display. Their command systems, power distribution, even their internal defenses, all follow the same crystalline logic patterns. Once we understood those patterns, you mapped their weaknesses, Rildor finished, his antennae twitching with newfound respect. Outside, the battle intensified as the Kryvax realized what was happening. Their formations became more aggressive, sacrificing smaller vessels to protect their command ships. Energy weapons blazed across the void, catching several human ships in devastating crossfire. Eagle Team is down, reported a communications officer, her voice steady despite the loss. Falcon and Hawk teams reporting heavy resistance but still advancing. Reyes acknowledged the report with a nod, her expression unchanged even as Alliance officers exchanged troubled glances at her. Apparent callousness. You knew you would lose those ships, Vextal said quietly. It wasn't a question. Every soldier on those vessels volunteered knowing the risks, Reyes replied. They understood what was at stake. Before Vextal could respond, the station rocked, violently as a concentrated barrage struck their weakening shields. Shields at critical, Rildor shouted. 3 minutes to complete failure. They're targeting our primary power core, Zeth added. If they breach it, they won't, Reyes interrupted, turning to her communications officer. Signal the Valkyrie. Execute Phase 3. From behind Halcyon Station, where it had been concealed from the Kryvax sensors, a human vessel unlike the others emerged. Where the other human ships were angular and utilitarian, this one was sleek, its hull covered with specialized sensor equipment and communication arrays. What is that? Admiral Tarek asked. The UED's Valkyrie, Major Jackson explained with evident pride. Our electronic warfare vessel. As they watched, the Valkyrie powered up its unique systems. No weapons fired, no physical attacks launched, yet across the battlefield, Kryvax vessels began to behave erratically. Some drifted out of formation, others fired on empty space, and several ceased firing altogether. The Kryvax use a crystalline, neural network to coordinate their fleet actions, Dr. Chen explained. It's extraordinarily efficient, But like all networks, it can be hacked if you understand the underlying protocols. The Kryvax had finally encountered a species that understood something they did not. That true strength came not from overwhelming force, but from the willingness to stand and fight when all seemed lost. From the courage to face impossible odds, because the alternative was unacceptable. From the knowledge that some things were worth dying for, and therefore worth killing for. It was a harsh truth, one that made the peaceful Alliance species uncomfortable. But as they watched Commander Reyes calmly directing both the battle's aftermath and preparations for future encounters, they understood that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy might be this very discomfort, this willingness to embrace the darkness when necessary to preserve the light. The resonance technology alone won't save us next time, Reyes was saying to the gathered officers. We need to integrate our approaches, combine the best of both our cultures. Our scientists have developed sustainable energy systems that could enhance your weapon's effectiveness, offered Rildor, his initial fear of the humans now replaced by cautious respect. And our telepathic species could improve your tactical coordination, added Commander Zeth. As the exchange of ideas continued, Vextal noticed something remarkable. The human officers were listening, genuinely listening, to the Alliance suggestions, not with condescension, but with authentic interest. For all their martial prowess, they recognized the value in the Alliance's more peaceful technologies. Perhaps that was humanity's true strength, she realized. Not their weapons or their tactics, but their adaptability, their willingness to learn, to evolve, to incorporate new ideas even in the midst of crisis. Director, Commander Reyes approached her, pulling Vextal from her thoughts. Your medical team has requested permission to study our field trauma techniques. Apparently they're impressed with how we've treated our wounded. Vextal's scales rippled with surprise.